This is the centre of Britain's democracy, Westminster. Unknown to many of us, a network of pressure groups, lobbyists, and right-wing propagandists have their offices in the streets that border Parliament. Their target is the National Health Service. Tamsin Cave and I are taking a tour. Okay, and this humble abode just round from Parliament is the Institute of Economic Affairs. Tell me about them.
The IEA is an incredibly effective propaganda machine. You look at the size of it, it's not a big, massive advertising company or lobbying agency. It's a small organisation, but the relationship it has with the media is incredibly tight. So it manages to get its messages into the tabloid press, it's all over the internet, but particularly the BBC. We do know from other sources that it has taken money from the tobacco companies. So for somebody like Philip Morris, the huge tobacco giant, they describe the IEA as particularly useful in getting its messages out into the public domain. Yeah. The NHS represents everything that the IEA stands against. So it is a public institution, but right now it has some friends in very high places. Okay, we're now in Tufton Street. It's worth noting that Tufton Street is kind of like this epicentre for these kind of think tanks. You've got the low tax advocates over there, you've got your climate change deniers over there, you've got your privatisers over there, your deregulators, they're all here. It's brilliant. And in the middle of it, you've got the Centre for Policy Studies, which this was Margaret Thatcher's think tank. So these are the offices of another free market think tank, business lobby group. It's called Reform. And this is it's sort of a younger version of the CPS, basically. And it was set up specifically to lobby for privatisation of public services, so not just the NHS, but education and justice and the like. The brilliant thing about Reform, very clever this, they set up a kind of front group. So it wasn't enough that they were then saying the corporate messages in the press. They set up another group. They set up a thing called Doctors for Reform, which brilliantly was led by a GP, one who specialised in Botox, but
distinguished specialist.
Exactly. And he can reach parts of the media that a think tank can't.
They're all round the honeypot, aren't they? They're all close to power, because just down the road there is the Department of Health. Yeah, I mean, imagine the corporate interests lined up. They are literally behind the Department of Health. It's very, very handy. Okay, here we are in Bressington Place, just off Victoria Street. Portland House, what's in there? This is the office of the trade body for all the other companies that are looking to get their hands on NHS money. So all the big outsourcers. You've got in there Care UK, biggest NHS contractor there is at the moment. You've got Virgin, they picked up £2 billion worth of NHS contracts in the last 5 years. You've got Bupa in there, hundreds of £1 million of NHS work. And there's the arm of the biggest US health insurer, which is called United Health. Their tech arm, Optum, is a member of this organisation as well. It's called the NHS Partners Network, and it paints itself as kind of part of the NHS family. They are investing in influencing the government. It's an investment they made, a tactical investment, because it delivers a return. I spoke to a leading lobbyist, Andrew Haldenby. The health service is a public service. Why should it be privatised?
I think the health service is a lot more of a public-private mix than people may sometimes think, and actually was right back at the beginning. So, GPs, a very, very crucial part of the health service, have always been independent contractors. In effect, they have their contracts with the NHS. But in many ways, the main thing I have to say is that the health service is this mix. It's this mix of public financing and a lot of private delivery, one way or other, that has built the health service we have today with its strengths and weaknesses. And I really strongly think that it should continue to be that mix going forward.
But Reform has advocated, for example, the introduction of payment in the health service. I think you called it a membership charge, and the people staying overnight in NHS hospitals should pay a hotel charge.
The idea of a sort of membership fee was put forward by Norman Warner, who is a Labour peer. What he was trying to answer the question in a pamphlet for us, how do we get citizens of this country to take their health more seriously? So he suggested, just as an idea, a £10 a month, if you like, membership fee, which is not a huge amount, but it would be enough to sort of give people, if you like, a sort of personal stake in thinking about their own healthcare. Certainly, if we think of something like technology, which will be absolutely core. It's already core, always has been core, but going forward, it's very exciting to think what new technology can do to the delivery of healthcare. That, at present, can only really be done in partnership with the private sector.
The new IT system in the health service was installed by private companies and was a total catastrophe.
Well, yes. I think there may be one minor thing that came out of it, so we can say nearly a total catastrophe.
All this wheeling and dealing behind closed doors fed into the 2012 Health and Social Care Act, which promoted privatisation and changed the NHS as never before.
It's a very large act. It's over 450 pages long. And it's really the act that enables both the dismantling of the old system that was in place from 1948 and a switch to a newer system which is much more modelled on the US healthcare systems of the US.
See, people watching this will be shocked to hear that their health service has been and is being dismantled.
One of the founding duties on the Secretary of State in 1948 was the duty to secure and provide health services throughout England for everybody. And that's the duty that has been abolished. That duty to provide has gone. The Secretary of State has a much weaker duty to promote a comprehensive health care, but the duty to provide services in accordance with the Act has gone. And as well as that, there is now a requirement to contract, a duty to arrange services instead, which is really legalese for contracting. And the way in which our government and NHS England is choosing to interpret it as commercial contracting.
This external market created by the Conservative and Liberals in the Health and Social Care Act was a monstrous piece of legislation. It was also a grotesque lie on the British public. Both the Conservative Party and the Liberal Party went out of their way in the election to say that they were not going to have another top-down health service. And they produced the biggest and the most revolutionary change in the National Health Service throughout its history in the 2012 Act. Cameron went on to say it's the biggest mistake he made. And here it is, 6 years later, still creating serious damage to the health service.
The biggest lie is that somehow markets and competition will improve healthcare. We know from all the evidence that's available that the more you privatise the system, the more you introduce waste and you introduce conflicts of interest. So that is a big lie. The NHS prior to the Thatcher reforms, the administrative costs were estimated to be less than 5%. But we know now, best estimates are that the cost of the market bureaucracy is running in the order of 20%. So that is 15% diverted away from the delivery of care. The beauty of the NHS came from its simplicity. And you had money coming from the Treasury to health authorities, and this was divided out between the hospitals and the GPs. There was no need for this army of intermediaries we now have.
The NHS crisis, which is no longer a winter crisis, it's an all-year-round crisis. And that's how privatisation is manifest. But it's very convenient because it looks like it's the NHS that doesn't work. It looks like it's the principle of publicly funded, provided and owned healthcare, which doesn't work. What people can't see is everything we've discussed behind the scenes, that it doesn't work because tens of billions are being siphoned off to running a market system, to the PFI debt, to outsourcing profits, to management consultants,